After a 1-week hiatus, we are back on the Talkback Show on the radio or whatever audiovisual device you choose to use. Welcome to the GBC podcast, where we talk about the Packers and our hometown of Green Bay. This is episode 9, created March 3rd, 2022. I'm John. I'm in Appleton, Wisconsin. Along with me, Jeff in Minnesota and Neil out on the East Coast. Say hello, gentlemen, and tell us what you're drinking.
Hello, gentlemen. Tonight I'm having a Founders KBS hazelnut. Good and good for you.
And I was just at a brewery last weekend and brought home beer with it. So I've got a Jersey Cyclone double dry hopped Eye of the Storm Nelson, a delicious and beautifully hazy beer.
And with my own homemade mix, I have a whiskey old fashioned. All right. You can find us on YouTube and Twitter at Green Bay Chat and Facebook at the GBC Podcast Green Bay Chat. Don't forget to subscribe for free to the YouTube channel. Hey, our topics tonight are going to be brief. Might be a short show, but who knows? It depends on how much talking we do. We've got
have you met us, John? Have you met us?
We got some salary cap moves to look at, and we're going to talk about some things that came about recently, like the Packers going to London and the potential for the NFL draft in Green Bay. And of course, we'll have our Packer player of the past along with our Packer history. But let's take a look at these salary cap moves. And really what we've got is a situation here where the hands are pushing the chips all in, but the feet are kicking the can down the road. Some of the moves that have happened already, Packers created over $10.8 million in cap space in 2022 by restructuring the contract of Kenny Clark. Great that we're going to have Kenny around for the next season for the big run, right? Packers have also created $3.08 million in cap space for 2022 by converting some of Aaron Jones's compensation into a signing bonus. And the other big move, David Bakhtiari, thank you, converted $11.58 million of compensation into signing bonus. Now, that's the way the report goes. I absolutely don't understand what any of this means. We didn't get Melanie Merrill on the show, who is the Packers salary cap analyst. She hasn't been returning my emails, but Neil, you've got some information that you can tell us what we've got and what we need to do, right?
Right. So the fundamental problem that we have is that even with those moves, we're still over $31 million over the cap for 2022. Now, there's an easy solution to both of those moves. You know, if we cut Aaron Rodgers and Zadarius Smith, that takes us $32 million, and then we're underneath the cap. Obviously, that's not what we're hoping is going to happen. But there are a lot of moves that can be made, but there are also a lot of things that have to be done. And I think that's the tricky part, is it's not just getting underneath the cap, but it's also having enough money that we can do the other things that we're going to need to make the Packers good this year, and actually challenge for a title. So, for example, we've got exclusive rights free agents, people that we want, and they're going to cost another $7 million that's not counted yet. Alan Lazard is going to cost us $4 million as a restricted free agent. That's not counted as far as our cap numbers are concerned. We can do some restructures with Adrian Amos, Dean Lowry, Mercedes Lewis, and Randall Cobb. That can get us in the range of a little over $10 million total. Obviously extending Aaron Rodgers is the most important part. And, Aaron Rodgers' current cap number for this upcoming year is almost $47 million. And so changing that $47 million to something palatable is obviously the most important thing that we've got to get done. And obviously that goes right to the core of where the issues are. So restructuring Aaron Rodgers is the most important, but there are also things that we can do. For example, Preston Smith's got an almost $20 million cap number. We could restructure Preston Smith and save a fair amount of money. Jair Alexander has got a year left and it costing us a little over $13 million. Take Jair and put him on a long-term contract. That's obviously going to change and reduce his cap number. So there are a lot of things that we've got available, but again, going back to Davante Adams, right? It's seems likely we don't have a long-term contract situation for him. Or at least we're not going to have it immediately. And tagging Davante is going to cost us $20 million. Now we can recoup that down the road, but we've essentially, in thinking about our cap situation, we've got to think about how we're going to address the tag on Davante Adams, and we've got to have enough space in order to tag Davante Adams. So there are a lot of things that are out there, and obviously the long-term deal is going to change that. But we've got a lot of free agents too, and a lot of people that we don't have under contract. And this is also going to impact, obviously, the course of the team. There's been talk about re-signing Devondre Campbell, obviously something that we're very interested in given how impactful he was, but that's going to cost money. And it doesn't matter how you structure his contract, it's going to cost us money in year one. Obviously Devontae is another person. Interestingly, Devontae and Devondre Campbell, both 29. So, there are questions as to whether these might be the wisest moves other than that Aaron Rodgers wants them. As I said, Alan Lazard, restricted free agent, Rasul Douglas, unrestricted free agent, Corey Bojorquez, Robert Tunyon, Tyler Lancaster. Obviously, we don't really care about Kevin King, but Equinemi, St. Brown. We've got a lot of players that are out there that are important players, not star players, but players that are all parts of the team and things that are going to have to come together. And so getting all of those moving parts is not just a salary cap problem. It's a question of, well, how are you actually going to structure this team? And that's obviously why the cap managers are paid the big bucks.
You throw these names out there and you talk about what we can do, but then we look at market value on these players, especially Devondre Campbell. And I'm going to throw one out here at you, Jeff, Jair Alexander. If they're going to create a contract extension to Jair Alexander, does he deserve to be the highest paid cornerback in the league or in the top of cornerbacks, defensive backs?
Well, and as Neil was talking about this, two things were going through my mind. Well, a lot of things were, but two specifically for the topic at hand. One, what is the salary cap for next season? It's like 200 and change.
Yeah, about 200. Yeah, it's 208 million. We carried over about a little under 3 million, so it's 210 and change.
Okay, so you were going on over. I don't think it's going to happen where all of those players are coming back. I just think that some of those players will be cut. Randall Cobb probably.
Well, Neil throws the age factor out there, and you look at Randall Cobb and Mercedes Lewis, two guys who I think everybody in Green Bay absolutely love. They're both great. They're both great locker room guys, and they are both guys who keep Aaron Rodgers happy.
Yes.
But, it's no secret Cobb didn't
really
contribute
that
this
core
season.
Injury or whatever he had. That obviously was a huge problem.
So he did have one game where he was really important as far as us winning the game. So
that's true.
And one game is, of course, only one game, but it's still one game.
But do you cut them and talk them into coming back at veteran minimums? Do you cut them outright and just save the space? Do you try to talk them into moving into coaching roles? What do you do?
Especially Za'Darius, because his cap number is so huge. What is it, like 18 or 20 million or something like that? And it just with his,
28 million for Za'Darius cap number.
Serious, it's, and again, he was a free agent pickup, 3 years ago or whatever. Fabulous pickup. And because that was very uncharacteristic, obviously, of what, kind of how Green Bay works. They usually don't do a lot in free agency. That was when they really splurged. It really worked out well for them. But, but just for this reason, you have to pay the piper at some point here. And this is where we're facing it. Like, okay, we had a couple good years. We didn't get to the Super Bowl. We didn't win the Super Bowl. And now, oh, by the way, now we're in salary cap hell.
Well, like I said, Jeff, you're just kicking it down the road. If we don't do it this year, if this doesn't start this season, it's going to start next year, the year after.
Right.
Because Neil,
it's not a matter of if, it's when. Right.
Looking at all the numbers there, Neil, this takes away my fantasy of trading Rodgers for every draft pick that's out there that's available, right? Because there's no way he's getting traded the year after.
Right. So, but you brought up Za'Darius Smith, and, that sort of gets into where we've already put ourselves not into salary cap hell, but certainly into salary cap heck. And so, Za'Darius Smith, as I said, has a 27+ million cap number, but if we cut him, we've still got 12 million plus of dead cap space. So we're saving 15, but we're not saving 27. So you can't just look at their cap number and say, well, that's what we're saving. And, that is sort of where the challenge is. You take the Aaron Rodgers trade. Well, Aaron Rodgers would trading us would, have
trading him
would have a $27 million dead cap hit on the Packers. 27 million for a dead cap hit in trading Aaron Rodgers. So, but
it's been done by franchises before.
But it would still be a $20 million cap savings, but it's not quite as straightforward as just look at their cap number and that's where we're coming out.
Right. And as Andrew Brandt said, it's guys like us that spend more time trying to figure this out than the people who actually work in the front office do. This is
Yeah,
stuff that they've known for 4 years that all of these chickens are coming home to roost. They have been looking at these numbers and they have been saying, what are we going to do? How are we going to do? A lot of it they wait on because of performance,
sure.
right? And now you've got everybody who has performed, above and beyond what you thought they were going to, and they're still performing at a high level,
It's a great
even
problem
with
to
age,
have.
right? With the guys that we brought in, with the draft picks that we've had. So it's nice having marquee players, but at some point, yeah, you're going to be forced to break up the
Yeah.
band as well.
Well, let's just sort of go back to some of these players. And again, so I want to first of all give a shout out to Ken Engel at Ken Ingles on Twitter. He's a Packers cap analysis Twitter account, and he's done a fabulous job of putting this information out there. But fundamentally, we haven't even talked about re-signing the free agents. And his analysis is that, well, we're going to have something in the range of say $8 million in cap space that we can work with, even with all of these maneuvers. And well, there's that assumes that we're signing Devontae, but that does not assume Devondre Campbell, that does not assume Rasul Douglas, and some of the other names that are out there. And so you don't have a lot of money as far as free agents, even if you maximize your cap space and kicking the can down the road.
Right. So you're not going to be able to sign any new free agents. And plus you still have to set money aside for your rookie numbers, right?
Well, yeah, that's all included in his analysis. But yeah.
Right.
So, he basically puts in about 10 million that you need for your draft class, and then your player 52 and 53 contracts and all of that. He's got all of that broken down. But yeah, fundamentally, if you're thinking about re-signing somebody who's other than Devontae, who's an unrestricted free agent, or signing somebody else off the street, you got a little over $8 million in sort of a best case scenario here, unless Packers do something that's a bit more drastic.
Just go down the list of names, Neil, and let's just throw it out there.
Let's start out with Devondre Campbell. I mean,
priority. Yeah.
He's linebacker. The good thing is linebackers don't cost anywhere near as much as other positions. They're an undervalued position as far as I'm concerned. I think that you try to do it, but again, he is 29, so you don't want a super long contract or something that's going to shackle you down the road. Obviously, let's Devontae. I mean, you have to sign Devontae, yes or no?
Well, I think it's the conundrum of the package deal of Rodgers and Adams.
But you've got arguably the best wide receiver in the game. He likes Green Bay. That's Green Bay is all he's known. Is the grass greener? I don't know, but I think that's a priority, regardless of if it's Rodgers throwing to him or Love or whoever else. He makes the quarterback better. He's the number one guy.
That's been the question for 30 years. Is it the quarterback that makes the receiver or the receiver that makes the quarterback? Because you look at some guys who have gone on to other teams, Antonio Freeman, Greg Jennings, so on, that went and played elsewhere, didn't produce.
But I would argue Devontae Adams is an upper echelon from those names you just mentioned. Just because
Devontae is a Sterling Sharp. Devontae is not an Antonio Freeman.
Thank you, Neil.
But even looking at our receiving core, and we've certainly disparaged the receiving core plenty. Alan Lazard's restricted, but you've got Equinemius St. Brown. You've got MVS as an unrestricted free agent, right? I mean, those guys, are probably not worth much, but on the other hand, you need receivers at some level. You can't just get receivers. We know the challenge is receivers not starting off the bat and they're rookies as stars. So you need You need some sort of veteran receiver.
That seems to be. Go ahead, John.
I was saying with Equinemius, his play has certainly dropped off. He started off the season back on the practice squad, had to work his way back in. His younger brother, Amon-Ra St. Brown in Detroit, certainly had a far better season than him. Unfortunately, I think his days are numbered in Green Bay.
But what I was going to say is that there seems to be, that's always kind of been the reality of, you draft a rookie receiver, first year, you're not going to get much. That seems to be changing a little bit because these last couple of years, there's been some pretty amazing rookie wide receivers that have come out. So I don't know if it's because they just came from, a pro style, in college or something. I don't know, but that's, we could debate that as well. Do you pick, Rodgers? I mean, if you look at the wide receivers that have always, in the last however many years, 10, 20, 30 years, Packers do not pick receivers high in the draft. They just don't.
But I'm
So
going to
that-
go. I'm going to go and make the argument. Continuing on, I mean, I think you're right that the pro style offenses make a difference. But I'm going to make the argument that Devontae is still getting up there in age for a receiver. We fundamentally don't really have a receiving core, and even if we in the end were to trade Rodgers, I mean, we need receivers down the line for whoever is going to be quarterback, and we need to draft a receiver. Maybe not necessarily for Aaron Rodgers, but we need to draft a receiver just so we have a receiver.
Well, and that's why they drafted Amari Rodgers.
right.
I mean, they drafted him third round, third round. So,
Sure.
He's kind of been. He's not a number one receiver. Clearly, he's not. I mean, he's a slot receiver, or he's punt return to kick return, and that's how they're using him. So do you look at in the draft, first, second round, do you pick an actual receiver, a number one potential receiver?
Going on what you said, historically though, the kick on receivers has always been that it takes them 3 years to develop. Why waste a first round draft pick on them? But then you have Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, who are starting to show that that's not the case. So now you got to go back to your scouting department and say, hey, we maybe need to come to a new philosophy on the wide receivers, but what's going to be there at number 28 then is the other question.
Right. Yeah. It's not like it's a top 5 pick or whatever.
Right. But I mean, I think, going back, so there's pro style offenses, but I think there's a big difference in how high school football is played now than it used to. And the fact is that receivers are getting more of a role in high school football, certainly than when you and I played, John. I mean, a receiver that,
there's a lot of things different now.
There are a lot of things different, but I mean, I think that fundamentally the receivers are maturing earlier for a lot of different reasons. And the other thing, I want to go back to Amari Rodgers, though. I mean, I don't know that we know that he's not a number one receiver. I mean, he's had 1 year. I think there's, he could become a Randall Cobb type, or he could come an Antonio Freeman. I mean, same draft round as Antonio Freeman, and I think it's certainly early to dismiss his potential as a receiver. And
I'm not dismissing it, but
he may be the guy that becomes, our Davante Adams, because certainly we know that there was a lot of consternation about Davante or Javonte Adams in his first couple of years in the league, and it took him a while to get to the point that we dearly love him.
Indeed, you're right.
Well, Randall Cobb was a receiver. He had a first round grade coming out of the draft, but he was considered undersized. Green Bay gets him at the end of the second round. He produces in his first 2 seasons really well in Green Bay. But again, is that because he is a product of the system with a great quarterback out there as well? I was going to cut you off too on the high school side. I don't want you, as long as Neil doesn't start telling us we got to start tanking for Archie Manning, who's down the road in the draft, we're okay. Here's a name though. Do you look at Mason Crosby? Is there someone who's whispering in his ear that it's time to retire?
Well, I mean, the Ken Ingalls analysis is the Packers saved $2.5 million by cutting Mason Crosby. Right, he's got a $4.7 million cap number. There's a little dead space in there, but we saved $2.5 million, and I think that after last season, that is absolutely in play.
They did just sign a second kicker, and the name escapes me at the moment, but I know JJ Molson, who was in Green Bay all season on the practice squad. So there's there's 2 other kickers doing off-season work, whatever it is they have kickers do in the off-season, that I think that the Packers have their eye on to say, is it time that we can make this move?
I want to just throw a quick shout out to Mason Crosby. Obviously, he's done incredible work for his time for the Packers, but I think it's remarkable. He's actually set the NFL record for most consecutive games played by a kicker. And that's just an incredible achievement and a testimony to his excellence over the years, that he's been able to set a record like that when kickers are considered to be dispensable by a lot of teams, and to be essentially indispensable for that long is an incredible accomplishment.
So it was announced by the NFL that the Green Bay Packers are finally going to be playing a game overseas in London. And when the Packers announced that on their webpage, along with Coach LaFleur, there are 4 players that are shown in the famous Abbey Road crosswalk. And it's Rashawn Gary, Aaron Jones, Jair Alexander, and David Bakhtiari. And I think online, a lot of people, there was a buzz about who wasn't pictured in this photo, specifically Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams. But I think you got 2 guys here who are rewarded. Aaron Jones and David Bakhtiari are rewarded by being in this picture, and hopefully Jair to say, hey, now we want you long-term. We're making a commitment to you. And certainly Rashawn Gary, what a, just he is not he's not a dominating player, but he is living up to his first round pick. And he certainly has changed a lot of opinions for people in Green Bay. But this brings up the question, though, back to your list, Neil, who will be on this team when they play? We don't know when the game's going to be, but who's going to be on the team other than these four guys?
You're fundamentally asking, who are we not going to re-sign?
Or who is not going to be on this team?
I mean, I don't, much as I'd like to see Rasul Douglas, and he's that right age of 26, I just think he's going to get too large of an offer from somewhere else. He's at a premium position. He's shown premium ability. I don't think there's any chance that we're getting Rasul Douglas back. We've got some of the older linemen, the Lucas Patricks and the Dennis Kellys. I think those are going to be a tough sell that maybe we may pick up in July. But Kevin King, I mean, his time must have run out by this point, right? I mean, there's no way that we're getting another year of Kevin King, are we? I think those are the people at the top of my list that I'm not sure about, but I would be willing to venture. And as far as those receivers, I think it's going to come down to the question of whether they're willing to wait for a low dollar contract. And, for Equanimous for MVS, I think that they will find something that's going to be more money for a non-Packers team. And I think that they're probably going to take that somewhat more money, even though it's not going to be a huge dollar contract, right? They're an NFL career is only so long, and you've got to make money at some point, and this is their time. And I think that expecting them to take a low dollar contract just to be on the Packers is unrealistic.
But that's why, so with Rasul Douglas, it'll be very interesting because he bounced around so much. Mm-hmm. Packers said, okay, we're going to sign you. And oh my gosh, success. So is there somewhere, again, it's business, right? So if somebody offers him a whole dump truck full of money, is he going to take it? Probably. But by the same token, if the Packers, offer him a pickup truck full of money, will he stay because the Packers kind of gave him that chance? Who knows? We'll see.
Don't know. Yeah, right. And I don't know if you can. And you have Jair Alexander and Eric Stokes as your 1 and 2. Yeah. And you can put Douglas in there, but that third cornerback position is kind of a plug and play. But then kind of going back to my concept with the receivers as well, is he a product of the system? Guys that, in the past played well at corner here, but not so much when they moved on. Doug Evans comes to mind. Craig Newsome comes to mind. But then you can throw Casey Hayward and Micah Hyde out there, how they did with the Chargers and the Bills.
You're just trying to cause pain for us today, John, aren't you?
It is, right. I like to ride the middle and play devil's advocate and get both sides of the story, Neil. But let's talk about London. You've got that. You've got a yellow jersey on. Are you going to wear
some jersey?
Are you going to wear that, Neil, when we go to London for the Packer game?
I will certainly be wearing it sometime because I will definitely time my visit to London to make sure that I also catch an Arsenal match. I'm a huge Arsenal fan. The gooning part of at Green Gooning is specifically referring to my being a fan of the Gooners, the Arsenal Football Club, which is just down the road from Tottenham Hotspur. And the fact that the Packers were finally chosen for London, finally agreed to go to London, I think is a more correct statement, was great. I mean, I think it is going to be nice. It stinks that we lose a home game, but it causes me substantial pain that we're playing in Tottenham Hotspur Stadium.
And you said the capacity is what, 60,000?
The capacity is 60,000 compared to Wembley and 90,000. But honestly, it's not the 60,000 capacity that I care about. That's obviously just going to increase ticket prices. It's the fact that Tottenham Hotspur are Arsenal's biggest rivals. We refer to them as Spurs. When you write that out, you put an asterisk because it's a profanity. There's a lot of Arsenal chants against Tottenham. What do you think of Tottenham? Shit. What do you think of shit? Tottenham. This is our biggest rival, and it's a team that's fundamentally a losing football club. The last time they won the Premier League was in 1961. The last time they won the FA Cup was in 1991. That's the premiere of the tournaments that they have in England. They won the Mickey Mouse Cup, but even that was in 2000. It's the Carabao Cup now, but even that was 2008, right? It's been 14 years since they've won anything. They're considered a top 6 club, and yet they have not won anything at all. They built this new stadium to think that it's going to make them a respectable team, but they're just a Mickey Mouse organization. And I'm glad. The one thing I'm glad about is that the Packers will at least be considered the home team. So we're not going to be wearing the lily whites of Tottenham Hotspur, but and absolutely, there's a part of me that is overjoyed by the concept of going to London, going to Tottenham Hotspur Toilet Bowl Stadium, and wearing and cheering for the home team, because that is certainly the only situation in which I would ever cheer for the home team in that stadium. So, but I absolutely would like to go.
Going back to that capacity, Neil, and we talked about that, and it is a Packers home game, and we consistently get 75 to 80,000 people in Lambeau Field for a home game. So now going down to 60,000, but why not put the Packers in Wembley where the capacity is 90,000? Because really, as soon as this announcement came out, 500,000 people online committed to going to this game.
Yeah.
The same number of people that say they were at the Ice Bowl is the same number of people who have committed to going to the game in London, right? It's going to far exceed the capacity by tenfold, possibly. So why? Is it because you can get a better ticket price, or is it because that stadium, as you said, being a new stadium, is more conducive to the American football game? That's why they built it that way.
I mean, they built it, to have a new stadium. They built it so they could be a multi venue or multi-event venue. But Wembley is the English national team stadium, right? It is where the English national team plays their games. It's where all of the major cups are. It's where the rugby games are. It is the national stadium. And I find it inconceivable that you would put the Packers in the shithole when you could have put them in Wembley. It just makes no sense to me whatsoever.
Well, plus it's also where Freddie Mercury controlled the crowd in Live Aid. What a amazing experience that would be to get to go to Wembley Stadium for a Packer game on top of that. But again, stigma or whatever, but I think that there's the league decision. I think it has more to deal with how that field looks on TV than anything else. But again, there's 500,000 people who have committed to go to a game that's going to seat 60,000.
Right. And every one of my Packers fans who are also Arsenal fans that I follow on Twitter, they're all just ecstatic about being able, whether in France, whether they're in England, whether they're in Ireland, they're all ecstatic about being able to go to see the Packers. And there is actually a level of guilt that I feel about, I'd love to watch the Packers in London. I absolutely adore London. I've been to London probably 9 or 10 times. But at the same time, do I displace somebody who's actually from England or from Europe that might want to go there as well? And I actually do think I feel a little guilt with the size of that stadium, that as much as I'd like to go, I really want the Packers to build their following in London. And I think it's an open question as to whether to go or not.
Any idea what the ticket prices are? I mean, are they the regular, kind of what they're going to, are they $60-$80 a ticket, or are they super high premium prices? I wonder, any idea?
I have no idea. I mean, I'm going to guess just sort of based on what comparable things are in London, you're going to sort of start at 60 to 80 pounds and move up from there. So, but I mean, it is certainly going to be a premium event. They've got club seating. They've got all of the amenities that you think of in a modern American football stadium, certainly. And those club seating type seats and boxes and things like that are all going to be expensive in their own right as well.
So there's some give and take there, because going to London in the 2022 season, Green Bay is losing a home game, which actually works out well because now they don't have to worry about trying to figure out whether it would be a green game or a gold package game. But we lose this game, lose some revenue. Mark Murphy announcing that to try to make up for it, Green Bay has officially thrown their hat in the ring for hosting the NFL draft in Green Bay. Now that won't be if they get the bid 2 years down the road, 2024. Still, that's not just a one-day event like a game day is, where you're bringing 80,000 people in for game day. It's a big event. Neil, you went to the draft in Nashville a few years ago, and I believe the total attendance on that for 4 days was 250,000 people, 250,000.
I would believe that entirely. It was entirely a random event that caused me to get that. I was driving on a road trip through the South, and it's like, well, we're going to stay in Nashville tonight. And it's last minute. I go on Expedia, get a room, and got Nashville. And I call and tell my parents that we're staying in Nashville. It's like, what's happening in Nashville tonight, right? And I said, no. Oh, it's the NFL draft.
I sent you that text message while you're on the way. I was like, Neil, wait a minute. Did you know that, how'd you find a room, right? Which is it must have been that somebody canceled at the last minute, because I got a room, right near the, half a mile from where the draft was. It was right on Broadway in Nashville, and it was absolutely an incredible experience. I absolutely loved it. The crowds are great. Everyone was going up and down. The bars were all there. Everyone was centered in one place. The bars were packed. Later at night, they had the
All the music venues were open, and you get to hang out with that. But there's a ton of capacity for bars, obviously, in Green Bay. But I still think that it's at a different level as far as what it was for people attending in Nashville, and that ignores the hotel. But I mean, just the experience of this road. I mean, it was, I don't know, a wide city avenue. 4 lanes on each side, and people were extending back for like 6-8 blocks and then spilling out a block or 2 on the side street either way. It was an absolute production, and I can't even conceive of anything like that in Green Bay. I'm sure they'll do a great job with it, but it's going to be a very different experience, certainly.
Well, 2 points there. One, you were able to get a hotel room the day of the event that close to the event. And like we said, there's 250,000 people that go through there over the course of 4 days. Where are you going to put 250,000 people in Green Bay? Every hotel is going to be filled from the tip of Door County to Milwaukee, and then from the lake all the way out to Stevens Point and Wausau. That's one thing. But then the other thing is, where would this actually be held? Now, the most logical choice is there at Lambeau Field, near the in the parking lot near the arenas, because then you've got the Titletown district experience there. But now there's not a lot within walking distance. There's a couple of bars, not a lot of hotels. So just from an infrastructure standpoint, I just have a hard time imagining this event in Green Bay.
And yet you look at who the current other teams who have their hat in the ring, and it's Detroit and Washington. And I like Detroit. I mean, I think it is an underrated city. I like Washington a lot. But it's not like these are marquee cities either, as far as entertainment is concerned. And so, if we were going against a larger city that had a lot of its own appeal, I think that it would be a tough sell for the Packers. But honestly, against Detroit and Washington, I think that there's actually a chance. And the NFL loves the concept of the underdog. Certainly, they love the Packers story, and I absolutely could see them doing it, despite the fact that it is going to be a logistical nightmare.
Well, in DC, if you have to do the event at FedEx Stadium, talk about that neighborhood out on, was that the east side, northeast side?
They wouldn't do it out by FedEx Field. They would do it somewhere centrally, because that neighborhood's not a great neighborhood. I mean, I've been to several games in Washington. And it's a horrible place to go to a game, because the park, you've got to pay an enormous amount for parking. There's the metro service. It's about a mile away from the metro station. It is just not a fun, there are no bars. There's nothing interesting in the area right around FedEx Field. I mean, it's great for Dan Snyder and making lots of money. It's not great as far as entertainment is concerned, but Washington, D.C. certainly has plenty of other areas where they could hold. I mean, in Nashville, it wasn't held anywhere near football. It was in the prime entertainment district of Nashville. And, while I was there, I was able to go to the Johnny Cash Museum, the Country Music Hall of Fame. There just were a ton of things that I could do. Because, fundamentally, the first night, everyone's all excited for their team. The first night, everyone is there for the draft.
First round,
it's first round. And then after that, it's like, well, I'm going to sort of show up. It wasn't anywhere near as crowded after on the next day, for the second and third rounds. And, you've got to have something else to do other than just watch the draft, because fundamentally, I only really care about who the Packers pick in the end. So,
but that first day is a Thursday, and it's a Thursday prime time. And then the second is Friday. Now, not only are you putting, let's say it's 250,000 people spread out over 4 days. Okay, so maybe it's 80,000 a day, but they have to get in and they have to get out, on top of the people that work in Northeast Wisconsin on Thursday and Friday as well. So now you've got I-43, I-41, Highway 29, 54. Every one of these roads is going to be packed. Highway 41 is a shithole as it is every day, the way the traffic goes on this road. And to add Packer traffic to it on steroids, it absolutely will be a logistical nightmare to put this.
Spoken like a true local, John.
Oh my gosh, it is unreal. Well, you laugh because you think, oh, Green Bay doesn't have traffic, but you guys haven't been living here.
John, you have a 5-minute rush hour. I understand Green Bay can be really bad for 5 minutes.
For the last 20 years, so just go fuck yourselves, okay?
I've been here at 5 o'clock on a weekday, and it's about 5 minutes of traffic you've got to deal with, John.
No, it is not, Neil. No, it is not. The corridor, you go hang out on West Mason Street and 41 anytime between 4 p.m. and 6 p.m. and you'll go, oh my gosh, am I really in Green Bay? Because you haven't been in Green Bay in 20 years.
John, let me expose you to Philadelphia traffic or New York City traffic, and then we can talk about traffic, okay?
Pre-pandemic, we're just
Again,
good.
you laugh
So,
because you haven't been here for 20 years. You think Green Bay doesn't have to. Green Bay
No,
has traffic.
we're
Just
not
shut up.
refuting. We're not refuting that there's not traffic. It's just that it's not
traffic. It's air quotes traffic. It's
You're
not
trying
real
to downplay
traffic,
it,
John.
Jeff, and I'm telling you, you're
Traffic.
absolutely wrong. Especially
right,
especially when you look at game day traffic, and if you take that
Well, no,
Sunday
game
game
day-
day
Game
traffic,
day,
Totally
game day's a separate
Yes.
story. But
what I'm saying is, if you take that Sunday game day traffic and put it on a Thursday,
well, don't go to work. Take the day
exactly,
off.
nobody's going to
You
go to work
deserve
on
it.
that Thursday.
Take it off.
Nobody's going to work on that Thursday or Friday because
Fine.
but you have the businesses that want to be open, that want to
Well, sure.
take advantage of the
That's
$1 billion
fine.
that's coming into town, Jeff. So,
They'll
it
figure
is
it
just-
out.
Yeah,
They'll figure it out.
they'll
One-
figure it out by saying, "Here, let's do it. You guys figure it out when it happens," and
Well,
everybody's going to. And then
They'll
think
figure
about
it out.
again,
It's Green Bay.
infrastructure.
They'll figure it. It's fine. It'll be
Jeff,
it'll be fun.
maybe
Okay,
we'll go to the
let's do-
concept that was used during the when they were talking about the Packers hosting a World Cup game, and we'll just put a couple of cruisers in the bay, and people go stay in the or
Right,
down the Fox
we'll
River.
we'll need a Navy ship in the bay, but okay, take
There
the
you go.
traffic out of it. Think of all the toilets that have to be flushed over those 4 days. Where is all that shit gonna go?
I don't know. It's
trust
a
me.
good problem to have. So I just wanted to make one other comment. So as I recall that draft in Nashville, though, because it was mostly outdoors, it rained the first night, did it not?
Yeah, I wore I got wet. I didn't really give a nobody gave a shit. I mean,
Well, that's the thing.
You
I
were
mean,
several
it's almost like-
beers in at that point, and you had an easy walk back to your hotel, which does get to John's point that you had the ability to change, go back. It was an incredible time. I really had a blast at that, and
Sure. Let's throw April
but I have a
weather in
hard
there.
time. But I have a hard time seeing how Green Bay. It will be fun, but it's going to be definitely a different experience for sure.
Throw April weather in there. Chicago had the draft a few years ago, and it was miserable weather-wise. April in Green Bay as well. Again,
Could be
People will
70,
de-
it could
people
be
will deal with it.
35. Yeah.
right. It could, yeah, if we go to the extremes, go back to 2012 when it was hot, go back 4 years ago when we had big snowstorms. But yeah, it's just, do I love the idea of having the NFL draft in Green Bay? Absolutely, I do.
Yeah.
But-
it'll be-
But then I just say, oh my God, why are all these people going to be coming to
It'll be
Green Bay? And
fine.
it-
You got to
yeah.
deal with it for 3 days, John. I think you can
3
handle
days,
it.
3
Yeah,
days,
3 days.
3 days, right?
Yep.
3 strange days, in fact.
Yes.
Well, when we talk about the draft and we've been talking about these salary cap moves, there is a great legend in Green Bay about a player being moved. And there's a line from the movie The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance talking to Jimmy Stewart in the movie where the newspaper man says, "This is the West, sir. When the legend becomes fact, print the legend." And there's a great legend about Jim Ringo and how he demanded a trade. He told Coach Lombardi he didn't demand a trade, he demanded a raise. He told Coach Lombardi, "I've got an agent, I want some more money." And Lombardi says, "Hang on a second," left the room, comes back in and says, "I've traded you to Philadelphia." And that's the legend that has always lived on. But Jeff, in our bedtime story, has the fact.
So Jim Ringo, during the 50s, Packers were not very good. He was a 7th round. Jim Ringo was a 7th round selection in the January 1953 draft. He was a fantastic player. So when Lombardi was hired, Lombardi declared him one of the 3 untouchable players on the team. So again, Lombardi inherits this team. They suck. They were 1-10 the year before, right? They're not good, or 1-10-1. They're horrible. So okay, Jim Ringo is one of the few bright spots on the team, and he indeed was 7 straight Pro Bowls, and he was just an anchor. However,
Actually, even more than he was 17 years straight first team All Pro starting in 57.
okay, thank you, Neil. However, Lombardi's style, as we know, Lombardi wanted a type of player, and that player had to buy into Lombardi's buy into Lombardi's system. And apparently, Mr. Ringo did not buy into the system. He was good. He was undersized. So the 3 of us that you see here are all bigger than Mr. Ringo. Actually, Jim was listed 6'1", 6'2", 2 1/4, give or take. He was quick. And at the time, the centers, when they pull, they could cut block. You can't do that anymore. So obviously the linemen are way bigger, but so he was good at cut blocking, and that's what made him successful, because the Packers had a very good and to drive that running game, because their passing game was horrific at the time as well. So sets this up. He's one of the best players on the team. Yet there was this, Lombardi, I would say, didn't like him, but I mean, he wasn't buying into the system, so he was somewhat expendable. So the law, or as legend has it, what actually Lombardi said, Jim Ringo wanted a raise. He was making roughly 20 grand. He wanted a $5,000 raise. He wanted roughly $25,000.
Is that per game?
No. That was for the season. Again, this would have been the 63 season, last season he played.
And again, just for context, he had 7 straight first team All-Pro at that point.
Yes,
7 straight
yes,
years.
He did.
First team
and
All-Pro.
at this point, the Packers had won 2 world championships, or with him, 2 world champions as well.
And he's the offensive captain. He's the offensive captain on those 2 teams.
Yep.
And he's making $20,000 a year.
But he had worn out his welcome. He really did. So Lombardi actually used kind of that legend. So what Lombardi, the quote that apparently Lombardi used was, I'm afraid you've come to the wrong city. Mr. Ringo is now the property of the Philadelphia Eagles. So, and Lombardi liked it because that wasn't the case. There was no way, it wasn't because, he was traded, was because of the agent, but it gave Lombardi leverage. He didn't want to refute the story, because he felt that it was an advantage, because yes, if players bring in agents, typically then there is this standoff and they want more money. And Lombardi was not keen on that, shall we say, especially with somebody that wasn't buying into his system anyway. So that's why Jim was traded. He was traded again to Philadelphia. Then he was traded for, where's that guy? Leroy Caffey, and
That's
a
right.
future #1 pick.
First round.
Leroy Caffey is kind of the missing piece of the linebacking core of the Packers. Throughout the 60s, everybody remembers Ray Nitschke and Dave Robinson, but the third person in that linebacking core that anchored those teams was Leroy Caffey.
So it turned out very, very well. So the transition was a little rough. So once Ringo was gone, again, he was the captain and the starting center. Bob Skronsky started in 1964, the first half in 64, didn't really work out. And then rookie Ken Bauman took his position and excelled after that.
My only regret with Jim Ringo's time in Green Bay is that the number of times that Jim Ringo and Bart Starr either sat or stood next to each other was all in a time before they wore nameplates. All I want is a picture of Ringo Starr on the Packers sideline, and we can't have it. I told Neil I want to get a Jim Ringo jersey just for the joke. I'm going to get a Jim Ringo jersey. We'll go to the game. Every Bart Starr guy we see, I'm just going to sneak up behind him next to him. You take a picture of me from behind. We'll walk away. He'll be none the wiser. We're going to get a whole bunch of Ringo Starr pictures.
Very good. Or you could just ask Ringo Starr to go with you to the game.
That would be even more
or
fun,
in
right?
London. In London. There we go.
Boy, and Ringo is 80. He's 82 years old now, so if
he's
he
still
can live,
taking nourishment.
Boy, if Ringo can survive another 2 years, that will be a great tie-in with the Green Bay Packers when they get to London.
So this Jim Ringo story is interesting as far as obviously the the legend of Vince Lombardi, but the fact of the matter is that Vince Lombardi, of course, was very cunning as far as his decisions that he made for personnel. And Jim Ringo would have turned 33 years old in that upcoming 1964 season. As it turns out, after he was traded, he only was second team All-Pro twice in the rest of his career. And so this guy who was fundamentally on the downside of his career. And, I don't think that Vince Lombardi really cared so much about buying into the system. When you've got somebody who's first team All-Pro, it's a matter of, is this guy going to be the person for the future, or do I need to find somebody else? And I think that one of the things about Vince Lombardi that is legendary is certainly his shrewdness in making moves. And maybe they were marketed one way and came about another way. But I think that it seems extremely likely that Vince saw the writing on the wall as far as the decline of Jim Ringo.
And that's exactly. Plus, as the defensive linemen were getting bigger, offensive linemen were getting bigger. Ringo was undersized anyway, so there's a whole bunch of factors that go into this. But no, I think Lombardi's shrewdness with his players. I mean, if you weren't producing, if he saw you, potentially weren't going to produce, you were gone.
Well, I mean, let's just go right to the modern equivalent, Bill Belichick, right? He's famous for not holding on players past when they are useful. And, Vince Lombardi certainly was doing this. And they guess, Vince Lombardi certainly was thinking in these terms as well, that I've got to have the best players on the field and I can't have sentiment keep players on longer than they otherwise would.
Yep. And guess what? He won a whole shit ton of championships by doing that.
And nonetheless, regardless of how Lombardi got along with Jim Ringo is a Hall of Famer. He has his name up in the ring. His name is up in the Ring of Honor inside Lambeau Field as well with the other, what do we have, 30 names up there now? We'll have to count them and add Leroy Butler.
So one other thing about Jim Ringo is that, he was obviously a legendary offensive lineman, and then he continued on as a coach after he retired for the game, as many people did. And he specifically was the offensive line coach for the early to mid 1970s Buffalo Bills teams, specifically the Buffalo Bills teams that produced O.J. Simpson in 1973 and his 2,003 yards, or 1,817 yards for O.J. in 75 with 17 rushing touchdowns and 7 receiving touchdowns, 6 and 5.5 yards per game.
In a 12-game season.
14 game season.
Oh, 14 games. Sorry.
14 game season at that. But yeah, he was credited for building the electric company offensive line for the Bills. And so 1976 comes along and it's like, oh, well, this guy's a legendary player. He's a coach. We're going to hire him to be the head coach of the Bills. And he subsequently went 3-20 over the next 2 years as the Buffalo Bills head coach. And so, although we have regrets about the Bart Starr years as a head coach, we could have done worse and had Jim Ringo as the head coach instead.
But he was only the coach for 2 years, unlike Bart's 9.
And with that, we definitely talked a lot more than we normally would talk on the show here, you guys. But let's kind of go around here. Any parting thoughts? We're in the postseason, or we're in the off season, I should say, and we probably aren't going to be doing this every week anymore, but we certainly have some things to look forward to as moves get made within Green Bay to help us with the salary cap. I'm sure we'll start wanting to do draft prospects coming up. I don't think we're as gung-ho as some guys out there in their podcasts and publications of every guy you need to take a look at and getting a scouting report on. I think we'll be happy with what we end up with, but certainly some things to look forward to here in the next month or two.
Well, and in theory, we're about 2 weeks away now from when Mr. Rogers said he was going to make a decision. So in theory, sooner than later, we're going to hear something the next couple of weeks, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem though, right? This episode is the speculation or the speculations. And I just do not have any patience at all for mock drafts. I find this to be the utterly most pointless exercise of all. We're going to get the players that we get, and all of these mock drafts are just there's no value to them whatsoever. I mean, I think that Mel Kiper and Joe Lunardi, the Black Bracketology guys, are both have the most pointless jobs, and I'm amazed that they're able to do what they do. I'm glad that they're able to be employed, but I don't understand why people look at, we've got mock draft 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, 4.0. I mean,
they make meteorologists.
None of it matters. And fundamentally, I don't care about the players until they get to the Packers. I don't watch college football fundamentally. I don't know any of these players. I don't care. When they get on the Packers, I'll learn something about them, but I just don't care about them until they get on the Packers.
Yeah, they make meteorologists look like, pros, right? Because, I mean, it's all speculation. I mean, like I said, we could spend days speculating and talking about these players. And Neil, I'm in complete agreement. It's the buzzwords, the upside, the whatever. I mean, whether it's the NFL draft, the NBA draft, I mean, whatever draft, what it boils down to is luck in a lot of cases, but also, is the front office really doing their homework, right? Are they, and how are you pick, this classic, do you pick for talent or do you pick for need or, whatever? We could probably get into that as we get closer to the draft, because I think you pick for talent, right? Is this the best guy in theory Again, you've got, again, Tom Brady. He didn't even look like an NFL player. My God, he just,
Right.
you look like some dude off the street. Oh, by the way, Hall of Famer. But yet you've got some guys that would seem, okay, he's a surefire, whatever, and they just don't pan out. It's luck, it's some skill, it's a lot of factors that go into it. But ultimately, at the end of and plus, then trying to decide who's going to pick where. Really?
Go ahead.
See, with that said, Jeff, we've got the Bible. We can take these and we can go through all of these past drafts. And we even mentioned it previously. The drafts of the 1950s were phenomenal. And we can look at these.
Packers drafts of the 50s,
Right. I would rather talk about how great some of these, or how terrible some of these past drafts were than, hey, we're going to get this guy and they're going to get that guy. I don't get the mocks I don't pay attention to. And literally any mock draft that says the Packers take a wide receiver in the first round, I just disregard right away. Anyway, it isn't going to happen.
I'm going to go so far as to say, I'm going to give up mock drafts for Lent. Now, I never consume mock drafts, but I'm going to give them up for Lent. It's just,
you never started them, but that's okay.
Well, that's good, Lent. Well, Lent will run until Easter, and the draft is right after Easter. So yeah, you'll get your mock drafts in right after Easter then. 46 days without a mock draft for Neil. We'll have to talk about the past drafts then as we go along here.
Yeah, a lot more to talk about with the past drafts and the pros and cons with that versus complete and total speculation.
And way more fun in general. But yeah, I mean, but even so, right? I mean, no team drafts, gets everything right or even close to everything. There's an inherent roll of the dice that's associated with all of these drafts, and you just got to hope that you roll a little bit better than the other teams. And that's the difference between winning teams and losing teams, is that they are smarter, that causes them to hit more often than they miss. But every team misses. Every single team misses.
Yep. We're all human, like I said, and that's really what it boils down to. The most wonderful physical specimen. I mean, you look at past Heisman Trophy winners. They do not play well, for the most part. They're terrible in the NFL. And yet you mediocre quarterbacks or, whomever turn out just fantastically in the NFL. There's so many stories of this and so many busts as well. And, maybe we can, for future, we could talk about.
First assignment is the 1989 draft and the number of Hall of Famers that are in that draft that didn't play in Green Bay.
Exactly. 4 of the first 5, and we picked, But and maybe that, so teaser, maybe we look at, the best drafts, the top couple drafts of the Packers ever, or, in the last 20, 30 years or whatever, and some of the worst. I mean, because there's a lot to pick from there as well.
Let's focus on the better for at least to start out with.
There you go.
Sure.
We each get to go out and determine our top 3, maybe our top 3 and our bottom 1. How's that sound? There's our homework assignment for next time.
There you go.
That's good.
All right.
Like
With that said, we're going to get out of here. You can get more information on the GBC podcast at Green Bay Chat and on Twitter. Follow us there, as well as on Facebook, the GBC podcast Green Bay. Subscribe for free on the YouTube channel as well. And may you fully appreciate the magnitude of your impending good fortune. Remember, when legend becomes fact, watch the podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Good night.
Slava Ukraini.